everything that you want to be silver. Once you've got all that silver, you can see the model's really starting to come together, but there's still a few more base coats to do. First of all, what we need is some Corvus Black for the black details. It's going to involve things such as the casing of the weapons and any joints in the armor as well. Now, Mark III power armor, you generally can't see very many of the joints, but there are a few there, so don't miss them. For example, on this one, we've got one just at the very back, just there. And you can also pick out some cables with this colour too. Now, one of the things you should look for in your Plague Marines that isn't actually on this model is any horns. Be sure to paint them with this colour at this time as well. And finally, using dried bark, pick out any leather on the miniature. For example, this strap on the bolter around here. And just be careful when you get close to the details, just take your time, but remember, it's easy to neaten up should you need to. Now, in addition, this is a great colour for any hair, which sounds kind of weird for these miniatures, but on this one, you can see on the grenade at the back, there's actually a shrunken head, and so we need to paint the hair for that as well. So be sure to get that detail at this stage as well. With all those base coats now applied, we're ready to move on to adding a second wash onto the miniature. And this time what we need is a dark brown for all these new colours that we've added to it. And what it's going to do is give them a kind of oily, grimy feel, so perfect for Plague Marines. The colour I'm going to use is Agrax Earthshade, and to apply it, I'm still going to use that regiment brush, because with this, what we want to do is to paint it over these new colours we've added since the bone armour, but not actually over the bone armour colour itself. So to help out with doing that, use the palette to get some of the paint on there and draw from that, because this way, it's much easier to control exactly how much you got in your brush, and that way it won't dry out as out of control. So draw from there, and then all you got to do is start painting over these newer colours. So we're looking at things such as the trim, or the silver, or the black details, the brown, all those parts. Just neatly paint over them like this. Once that wash is completely dry, you can see it gives much more definition to those colours, but it has dulled things down quite a lot, which for Nurgle is fine, but for that green, because it's such a large part of the colour scheme of the miniature, I'm just going to brighten that up a little bit. So what we're going to do is return to Castellan Green to layer it. And to do this, I'm still going to be using that regiment brush, and we really don't need very much here. What we're looking to do is just to apply a small amount of this onto the flat of that armour panel, but not going quite to the corners this time, so we want to keep that definition from the wash. So once you've got your paint ready, this time as you're applying it, what you need to do is just, well, as I said, just apply it to the flat areas, such as on this shoulder plate just here. What we're going to do is just paint it onto areas like that, but not go quite to that corner where it meets the brass, because this way you retain that definition. And with that layer done, the model is now really coming together. And in fact, if you wanted to, you could leave all these details here and just skip ahead in this video to paint all the flesh and the really gross bits of the miniature. But if you want to make it stand out a little bit more on the tabletop, then what you need to do is to highlight these details. And that's what we're going to start doing now. And to begin with, we need to highlight that bone white armor. For this, what you need is a pure white, so I'm going to use some matte white from the armor painter for that. After that, we need to highlight all the bronze trim, and for this, Sycorax bronze is a perfect colour. And then we're going to move on to that green detail, and for this, what we need is some Lorraine Forest. But first of all, I'm going to use some matte white, and to apply it, I've actually got a small layer brush from Citadel. And to do this, what we're going to do is just apply this colour to the sharpest edges and the rivets that are on that bone white armor detail. Now, to do that, the real trick is to make sure the paint is thinned down correctly on the palette. So you can see I've already got a little dot just there. I'm just drawing it out. It's quite thick straight out of the bottle there, so I'm just going to add a bit more water to it to thin it down. And the water goes next to it like that, because this way, you can go back and forth between the two to bring it to the consistency that you want. And what I'm looking for is to get it to a point where it flows really easily from the brush. And you can test that on the palette as well. To do that, what you do is just get off excess off on some tissue there like that, load up a little bit, and just see how far you can go by painting some lines in the palette. Just start having it go like that. And if it applies easily to the palette and just keeps on going, then you know you've got it thinned down to the right sort of amount. And this is going pretty well, so I'm quite happy with that. So I think that consistency is pretty good. So I'm just going to load up fresh with a small amount. There we go, just make sure I've got a good tick on the brush. And using this, what we need to do is now look for all the sharp edges on the armour. The good thing about Mark III power armour is that it's actually very well defined. You can see there's edges such as around the leg just there. All you do is angle your brush, say you're approaching it side on, and just skim it using the side of the brush like that to catch that edge. And you see this way I get a highlight appearing on those details very quickly and very easily. And the real trick to doing this right is to turn the model so it's always comfortable to approach it. And that might mean sometimes turning it right around like that so you can approach these edges like that. And even though I'm close to the tip of the brush, you see I'm actually using the edge. And I'm just kind of going to pick out areas that we're going to. Finally, we just need to return to the pustules because that contrast paint is taken away from the yellow a little bit. So we're just going to return to Avalanche Sunset. And this time when applying it, just do a small amount.
I make my own green stuff chemical roller and then just give them away so people don't have to go to green stuff world.
I like anything that doesn't go to green stuff world. Hold on a sec. You just wanted to break the stream because it was working so well.
Sorry. That's me. Like, you'll see a bunch of gray miniatures, and in the background there's a kind of a greeny picture of them, like a painted picture of all the robots.
Okay, now we got AliExpress happening here. US $2 something or other. Hold on a sec.
I was thinking of scooping up another set of them too. Also, one of the little robots obviously has an Imperial Eagle on his chest.
Sorry, tell me one more time. What's it called? Joy Toy? All one word?
One word. 1/35. Model kit, robot figures, mini machine, 12 pieces, model toy, new color.
Whoa. That's a lot of words. Whoa. So Joy Toy 135 model kit.
Wow. You gotta close your don't waste this discount.
It's gone. Oh, go away, AliExpress. Model kit, action figures unpainted. Oh, I think you showed me these. Wait, they look like robots. I don't see any Marines.
There's no Marines.
Oh, they're just robots.
There's dreadnoughts. There's things that look almost exactly like dreadnoughts.
Yeah, I see dreadnought things.
Yeah. There's these kind of chicken walkers on either end. The chicken walker legs are absolute garbage, but the little cockpit is pretty interesting.
Oh my god, they really want to give me $2 off. It's like ridiculous.
They know that you never shopped there before.
Oh, so these are kind of... Wait, can I get a bigger picture?
The entire front row of turtle guys are the coolest ones. Their legs are super cool. Their bodies are a little bit garbage. Their arms are pretty cool. But
oh yeah, these guys are pretty neat.
the back row are mostly shite.
You mean the back row, the ones that look like dreadnoughts?
The dreadnoughts are okay.
Oh, yo, this guy does have an Imperial Eagle on his chest. The little dude with the... Oh, wow, yeah, there's straight up Aquilas on them. The two with
The chicken walkers, the legs on the chicken walkers are they're not tall enough. They're like the chicken walker trying to get as low as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So they look kind of goofy. I haven't really found anything useful for those chicken walkers, but the cockpits, they
pretty
open
good.
up and there's like a detailed seat stuff. So I was thinking of sticking that on something.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, these little dudes, they totally have Imperial Eagles on their chest. Wow. And you said it's rubbery, the material?
It's rubbery, but you can file it too. I've had success filing it. It's kind of like the same rubber or the same plastic, I guess, those Battletech movies from
I got you.
Jade Finch said hello.
Jade Finch, welcome.
Morgan says, got them.
Yeah.
I highly recommend them. Like, there's a couple garbagey stuff in there, but there's some really, I don't know, they're really cool. They're really fun. Yeah. Like, one thing I was thinking of, in Horus Heresy, there was the Mechanicum faction, and all their stuff, you have to buy all their stuff, which is like super expensive just for even their everything. So I was thinking of making some Mechanicum stuff out of buying another set and using what I have to make some cool Mechanicum stuff. But,
cool.
Perhaps. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to turn this
The
off.
cool thing that I want to tell people about is there's an app right now on the Apple Store for Battletech. It's like when you play Battletech, you get those sheets that you kind of record all your stuff on. They finally made a digital version, and it's actually really, really cool.
So
it's insane to see a company make a digital app for their board game, and it is very well executed.
It slaps.
But it's really, really cool. It's like, right now it's in beta, so anybody can download it for free and test it out and send it to you.
Sorry, you talked about a beta app. Does anyone want to talk about the Games Workshop beta app for Warhammer 40K? I don't play. What?
Just finishing. The Jade Finch team is just finishing up some SN8 launch coverage. SN8?
I don't know what SN8 is.
But God, this up over SN8.
Cool, thanks for joining us alongside your SN8. Oh, is that like a gaming thing?
Maybe. SN8 launch.
That's not Cyberpunk, is it? That's that thing that everyone's crazy about right now.
Starship. SpaceX Starship. Oh no. Oh no.
Oh,
Oh, no.
SpaceX?
Explodes after first successful high altitude flight. Oh no.
Oh, it just did?
3 hours ago. Oh no.
Oh shit! That's this.
Oh no.
Isn't that the second time the Starship has exploded?
Oh no. I don't
Jesus
I think that's
Christ.
the second
These
time the
guys.
Starship has exploded.
know. Oh no. Anyway,
Stop making that stupid voice.
sorry. I live with a 2-year-old, and the last makes stupid voices.
Yeah, but 2-year-old's not on the call, man.
You see that video of my 2-year-old doing the dishes for me?
Your 2-year-old's freaking adorable. Your 2-year-old should come and do the dishes for me. I showed that to Dad. He really liked it.
Good. I'll get some more videos
Oh,
of
that's right. They're brothers.
As well as your sister-in-law's video of him dancing. That's amazing.
Rockets have a 50% chance of blowing up. Yeah.
Who said that?
That's Liz Mechanica.
That's what rockets do. Conclude.
Never ride a rocket. K-13 FN9 will roll out to Launchpad in the coming days. The explosion was newt expected.
Newt expected. So it is the SN9 is the Starship, or this is a different SpaceX thing?
SN8, I guess, is a rocket, the most recent one, and SN9 is going out soon.
Wait, wasn't SN8 like the Dragon capsule?
I don't know.
God.
Dragon Capsule, these are wicked names.
Yeah, he's got good names. Other than
I
Cybertruck.
think Elon Musk is playing his own miniature board game.
Yeah.
Fire the Dragon Capsule.
Cybertruck was a mistake, but Dragon capsule is good.
Dragon Capsule. These also like Transformers too.
Crew Dragon, I think that's what it's called.
Maximize Cybertruck terrorize.
Dude, Cybertruck would definitely be a Maximal, and Crew Dragon would definitely be a Decepticon. You got him backwards.
So you're working on the Dom.
Yeah, I have this problem where I leave miniatures in pieces and I try and like work them up in pieces, and it takes me forever. But as soon as I put them together, like assemble the pieces,
It goes fast, right?
much faster. So I think I should just start putting this thing together.
That's a good call. So with the Dom, are all the pieces finalized that they need basically to be put together and then bring stuff into place? Like,
Does this look finalized to you?
I don't know.
No, this is not finalized.
Alright.
They're getting there, but like the legs are just kind of roughed in. They're not finished or whatever.
K-13 says up to SN16 we have seen parts of it. Parts for up to SN16.
What are we talking about? Sorry. Forgot to turn off the mic. Shit. Sorry. That's good.
Do you know what we wouldn't have found if we would have stayed on the trip?
Huh. I guess that's it. I don't know. God bless it. What was that guy's name? I mean, he's incredible.
Yeah, it's like kind of an octagonal shape with like a central chamber. I gotta like continue that onto the other plates on the back. But then it continues at the back here on the tail section, although it's slightly different on the tail section. Hello, everybody. I'm joined today by special guest host Kajan. Want to say hi, Kajan?
Hey, everyone.
John.
And we can see that in the chat. We've already got Symbio Joe and Darth Bob joining us. Hi, dudes. Welcome to the chat. and welcome to the stream. Oh, Jade Finch Scene is here too. Hello from Utah. Hey, Jade Finch, thanks for joining us. Yeah, on today's stream, because we're now through November, I'm planning to maybe do some work on the Gun Beast, so more Tyranid stuff. But I kind of wanted to do a little bit of a November review thing, because I started this thing like on my own profile and also on the Warp Shadow profile, but then I've been mostly, yeah.
Just don't click on the hashtag Twitter.
Oh, why? Because it's. Oh, wait, on Twitter?
Yeah, just don't.
What's going on Twitter? I haven't even looked at it on Twitter. I've been posting on Twitter, but is it that bad?
Yeah, it was a terrible hashtag for Twitter.
Is it like some kind of porn thing? Now you make me think it's a porn thing.
Yeah, it's a fetish thing.
Oh no! Oh no! I should not be putting that on my posts. Well, thanks for warning me now, but I guess it's a little late. Yeah. Okay. So if you don't ever look up November on Twitter. However, if you look up November on Instagram, it's like happy shiny stuff. Here, let me see. Watch it be like porn now. Please don't be porn. So yeah, if you look up the hashtag November on Instagram, it's actually a lot of food stuff. I when someone suggested this in the chat on one of our streams, and I kind of went like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, let's do it. I didn't. It's stupid because I work in social media, so I should have like gone and checked the hashtag, but I didn't go and check the hashtag. And there's all this cute food stuff that's supposed to be posted for November, but unfortunately, we took it over with hideous Tyranid stuff. So I'm very happy with all the hideous Tyranid stuff that everyone did to clutter up this beautiful hashtag that we've taken over.
Someone else also did Knitwember
yes.
hashtag.
So that would have been. Yeah, that's probably the better hashtag. Oh, this looks promising. Oh, it's High Fleet Hyper. Okay. That is Flynnhammer, I think, who started the... is it 2 N's? Yeah, Flynnhammer started the Nidvember hashtag, which probably is a lot better hashtag, and likely we should just go with Nidvember if we do this again next year. Oh, I should say when we do this again next year. So I guess it's a little late. Yeah, okay, so if you don't ever look up November on Twitter. However, if you look up November on Instagram, it's like happy shiny stuff. Here, let me see. Watch it be like porn now. Please don't be porn. So yeah, if you look up the hashtag November on Instagram, it's actually a lot of food stuff. When someone suggested this in the chat on one of our streams, and I kind of went like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, let's do it. I didn't. It's stupid because I work in social media, so I should have like gone and checked the hashtag, but I didn't go and check the hashtag. And there's all this cute food stuff that's supposed to be posted for November, but unfortunately, we took it over with hideous Tyranid stuff. So I'm very happy with all the hideous Tyranid stuff that everyone did to clutter up this beautiful hashtag that we've taken over.
Someone else also did Knitwember
yes.
hashtag.
So that would have been, yeah, that's probably the better hashtag. Oh, this looks promising. Oh, it's actually Hyper. Okay. That is Flynnhammer, I think, who started the, is it 2 N's? Yeah, Flynnhammer started the Nidvember hashtag, which probably is a lot better hashtag, and likely we should just go with Nidvember if we do this again next year. Oh, I should say when we do this again next year.
Awesome. Looks good. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's insanely cool. I don't know about that. That's weird. Hmm. Fuck, that's the problem. He's so good. Christ almighty. Pretty good. God damn it. Pretty cool. That was clever.
God, I love the spider guy. He's my favorite. Yeah.
Your George has discovered the November hashtag on Twitter. Says, well, another reason to never use Twitter.
Yeah, I feel like Kajan and I are the only ones who like use Twitter of the people who are on the chat. Yeah, and like Kajan, you post all your sculpting work on Twitter. Do you not want to post it on Instagram? We've probably been over this. Is it like a Facebook thing?
Yeah, it's a Facebook thing.
I
Facebook
understand.
doesn't like my email address.
Oh, that's weird. So Facebook has told you can't use their system. It's not. I assumed it was you being smart and being like, I don't want to give Facebook my information.
That's another reason, but I would have done it to be part of the community. But when I tried to make my account, it told me, we don't like your email address. So I said, okay, fine.
That's really strange. Oh, man. Anyway. Yeah, Darth was saying that Spider Ripper that we showed was the head that Marco Moloch used, I think, for his talent horror. And it's a really cool bit. And I've, inspired by Moloch, I've wanted to do the same thing with that Ripper. It's a little Spider Ripper from the old Tyranid Swarm, or the old Swarms. So there's the Spider Ripper in this video, and the thing standing to the left of it is called the Grabber Slasher, which is, I think it was supposed to be a proto-Lictor, but it was like really, really old and really small. But yeah, that Spider Ripper is really cool. I don't know if you're going to have any success finding it, because it's probably impossible to find today, but who knows? Actually, if you ever want tips, I love this little guy with the tongue. He just went by, the little guy painting green there. If you ever want tips on hunting for classic Tyranids on eBay, you should reach out and talk to Flynnhammer on Instagram, because as you can see from his collection, like if we go through his other posts, he's done these.
First edition Ripper, what you are showing there.
Yeah, that's what first edition Ripper. That's what it comes up as. So
all of them.
Yeah, that's true.
Are the Ripper Swarm.
Yeah, together they make up the Ripper Swarm. They basically, I think these were squigs or something as well. I think they served a double purpose. Like for orcs, they were squigs, or some of them were, and then for, like you can see the one beside the spider is like a very clear squig design. And then for Tyranids, these were like the members of the proto-Ripper Swarm in first edition.
Yeah, the thing about the Ripper Swarm is they are a whole host of organisms Tyranids introduced into the biosphere to break down all the biomass of the planet.
Yeah.
It's not just those little worm thingies.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it got more streamlined in later years into the worm thingies. But yeah, I just wanted to go over to Flynnhammer's account just because if you haven't been to Flynnhammer's account, he's done this amazing retrospective where I think he took virtually every Tyranid model and some Armorcast models. Like you can see the Armorcast Exocrine model here, classic, based on the Epic model, contrasted against the current Games Workshop Exocrine model. So there's a bunch of cool turntable videos on Flynnhammer's Instagram. But if you are looking for old Tyranids on eBay, talk to Flynnhammer because he does it all the time. Like, he's a pro. He's hunted them.
They made hard for.
I'm not really sure. It might be lighter than foil. I don't know.
Extremely excited to bring you the first part of my interview with Mr. Pink from Modern Synthesis fame. Now, before I get into the interview, I'm sitting at your desk or by a computer, you can go and take a look at his website at modernsynthesist.com, or you can take a look at his Twitter and Instagram feeds. You can find him on Twitter at mod_synth, or on Instagram at just modern synthesist. That way, at least you'll understand some of what we're talking about. We primarily in this first episode will talk about his Dark Eldar creations. So if you're not familiar with them, again, I really strongly suggest you take a look, because some of the things that we'll be talking about are almost impossible to describe. But if you have seen a little bit of his work, I think it'll really make some of our conversation a lot more fruitful. So without further ado, I'll jump right into the first part of the interview. And at the end of the episode, I'll lead us out as well. But sit back, enjoy the ride. It's a really fun conversation. I think you'll like it. My guest today is Mr. Pink of Modern Synthesist fame. First of all, is that what you actually want us to call you? Do you go by Mr. Pink?
I do go by Mr. Pink, so that's probably okay.
Perfect. All right. Is that a reference to Reservoir Dogs?
Absolutely. I'm glad you caught that one.
Okay. I've always actually wondered that about your name, so I'm glad I cleared that up. I think I first discovered his blog because of some sculpting tutorials that he's done that I recommend for basically everyone at any skill level. They range from the very basics to some pretty advanced techniques, and he has promised to put out more of them. Hint, hint. So, yes, please do so, sir.
Absolutely.
But there are some very good tips in there, especially if you're getting started. He covers everything from the tools you'll need to practice tutorials you can do, things like that. So definitely worth checking out. Come for the models, but stay for the learning, basically. So I guess first things first, I'm always curious how long people have been gaming or how they got into the hobby. So I guess what's your origin story, as it were?
Sure. Well, before I get to that, can I apologize for two things?
Sure.
First of all, I'm dealing with some kind of cold thing, so I'm sniffly.
That's all good. Don't worry about it.
Secondly, I definitely want to apologize for choosing one of the most obscure names ever for my blog. Modern Synthesis doesn't really roll off the tongue, but hopefully people still, get in and check it out.
Yeah, these days people will kind of type it in more than they'll actually say it out loud. So.
Yeah, exactly, as we just discovered.
Right. So I wouldn't sweat it too much.
So origin story. I feel like I got started in the hobby a couple of times. The first time I was ever introduced to the Games Workshop hobby was when I was a kid, probably about, I guess it would be like the third or fourth grade. I don't know what year that was, but it was around the time that they had those Rogue Trader multi-part. I had a friend across the street, and the little brother would kind of like kick around and look at his stuff. But he got into Warhammer 40k somehow, and his parents were artists, so his mom ended up painting his Harlequins, which was
that's awesome.
But I just remember that they had an amazing gaming table in their basement, and it was all the scenery was built in, like the actual hills built into this thing, and sewers and all kinds of stuff. And it wasn't Google terrain that just kind of skittered around on top. It was physically built into this table in a way that only parents who are artists can do for you, I guess. And it just blew me away. And seeing these little space marine dudes kicking around, that was my first experience with it. And then had a couple other run-ins where like a friend got some orc models at a point and we tried to paint them. But then I got into it seriously in my first year of high school when I was trying to buy Ultramarines for my brother off a friend who was into this Warhammer 40k thing. And he said, well, actually.
Make it sound like a drug deal or something.
Dude, is this not how you got into Warhammer 40k? Warhammer 40k was absolutely drug deals. When the second edition Tyranid Codex came out, that was when they had the new plastic gaunts, the new plastic warriors, and then I kind of got back into it. And around that time was when I discovered a Yahoo group for Tyranids, which was back in the day before like real forums and social media.
Right.
But that, I think, was the catalyst that really got me into the hobby in a big way, because there were a lot of people there doing conversions. There was a guy there who was sculpting his own stuff, and like it all seemed so foreign, but it was where I got my start. And then that Yahoo group got taken over by spam bots and porn bots.
Oh, God.
A really amazing member of that group named Michael Cassavet, he went by the name Phage. He started Warp Shadow, just like out of his own pocket. He found out how to create a forum, set up the domain, and he's like, hey, let's go over here. There's no porn bots. And that was really the beginning of me taking the hobby seriously, because I don't know if anyone, like, people are still familiar with Warp Shadow these days. It's not as active as it once was, but in its heyday, and like in Tyranid's heyday, it was insane. Like that was where Moloch happened, and like Hydra, if you know Hydra, and there's this other guy on there named Box, and these people were all just doing phenomenal conversions. Like if you've ever heard of WhiteMetalGames, Ed Forte came out of the Yahoo group and Warp Shadow. Like these people started Warp Shadow just like out of his own pocket. He went, found out how to create a room, set up the domain. And he's like, hey, let's go over here. There's no porn button. And that was really the beginning of me taking the hobby seriously, because I don't know if anyone, like people are still familiar with Warp Shadow these days. It's not as active as it once was, but in its heyday and like in Tyranids' heyday, it was insane. Like that.
I remember these.
Its heyday and like in Tyranids' heyday, it was insane. Like that.
I remember these.
Was where Moloch happened, and like Hydra, if you know Hydra. There's this other guy on there named Box, and these people were all just doing phenomenal conversions. Like if you've ever heard of WhiteMetalGames, Ed Forte came out of the Yahoo group and Warp Shadow. Like these people were converting Forge World models before people converted Forge World models. Back when like Forge World models were these precious things that you paid hundreds of dollars for and never touched.
Right.
And made a dominatrix out of it. We all thought he was insane. And then he told us that we could do it too. And
That's awesome. Yeah, I've actually, you have a conversion like that on your site, right?
yeah, so he did it originally, and then I did a version. I swore that I could never do that, and then a very, very, very amazing hobby friend of mine named Ross Nickel, who sadly is passed away a number of years ago. But he's like a human cheerleader. That was my first commission.
Wow.
Yeah. So that one wasn't that great, but then I did a second one for Moloch, and that one was much better than the first one. Yeah, I think both of those are.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Wow, what a cool story. Like, just in general, it's...
Yeah, so I feel like that was kind of like when I was most active in the hobby at that point, and then I kind of fell out of it again just because of like life, and I wasn't as into it, and that was kind of in the years when Games Workshop had a very adversarial relationship with their hobby community. And having grown up with like old school White Dwarf, where when I found that Tyranid community on Yahoo groups, it was actually because White Dwarf told me to go there.
Oh,
The
wow.
kind of thing that you couldn't imagine for a number of years. Games Workshop promoting some real White Dwarf, where they would give you like experimental rules, and here are the Tyranid monstrous creature design rules, where you can make your own crazy creations. And that was what I loved about the hobby. And then I kind of watched that part of the hobby die, and it just seemed like it was price increase.
Yeah.
Anyone who tried to do anything original was getting shut down, and yeah, so that put me off the hobby for a long time. And then I kind of got pulled back into it sometime around, I don't know if it was 4th or 5th edition. The new Dark Eldar Codex came out, the new Dark Eldar line came out, and it was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere in there, I was really inspired by the homunculus stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I was active on a community, both Warp Shadow and the Dark City, and I met someone in Warp Shadow who I convinced to let me do homunculus coven for them, like convert a couple squads of Racks and Grotesques and some Raiders. And it was really fortunate for me. It was basically, I wanted to do these cool conversions. I didn't have the money to do it. So I found someone who wanted to pay me the money to do it.
So,
I didn't want to keep the models, I just wanted to do them. So I did it for this guy.
oh, so that's okay. Because that's actually one of my favorite projects of yours, and that's what my next question was going to be about, was the homunculus coven. So you actually started doing those for a buddy, and then you made your own after that because you liked it, or
Yeah.
so
Yeah, like it was something where I saw the art in the codex, and it really inspired me. And then I saw this was, I think, before they had even released the Racks. I don't know if they'd released them yet. Because the Racks and the Grotesque came out after the codex. But there was art for them in the codex.
Mhm.
And they came out in fine cast, so they weren't in plastic yet.
Yep.
And I was so blown away by the art. I'm like, hey, I can make those. And that's where I came up with the idea of combining like flagellants and bloodletters to make a rack model. Yeah, that was when Paulson Games, he created his own things that he called bioterrors. They were basically, this is like chapter house days. Is that what it was called? Chapter house?
chapter house? Yeah.
They were the knockoff Marine guys, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, so this is like third parties creating conversion bits, a modification for test. I made my custom racks for this guy, and then I converted my first Dark Eldar situation where I'd done a couple of commissions before, but I didn't really know what to quote the guy, and foolishly we didn't agree to a price up front, so it wound up me being like, hey, I spent so much time on these things and made each one of them like a work of art as far as I'm concerned, and it's going to cost you this much money.
Right, you can't afford
like,
it.
oh God, I wish we talked about this before. So fortunately, he was still like, okay, I want the models, so we came to an agreement, and I made him one squad of racks and one squad of grotesques, and we called it quits after that. But the bug was still in me, and I still really loved like my concepts for them. And by the time I kind of got midway through that commission, or by the time I was finishing it, that was when the first models, first Finecast models for the racks and the grotesques came out, and it was a pretty great compliment because the guy who commissioned me, I'm like, oh God, I'm sorry, man. Like, I made you these models, and now there's new models. And he said, well, I like your versions better, so that's fine. I kind of like my versions better as well. So yeah, from that, I was just like, hey, I have these models. I really like the ideas I have. Maybe I'm going to start making these for myself.
That's pretty awesome. So I was going to ask you, I think you already kind of answered it, but I was basically going to ask you where you came up with the idea for the army. But I mean, you explained it all pretty well. But I do want to point out to the listeners that you did this whole process really, really well on your blog. And I think if you're not familiar with it, for the listeners out there, I think you should really check out his Armies on Parade board. This thing is insane. I can try to describe it, but it's not going to be good radio. Essentially, it's just like a pit of gore, and you hand sculpted all these really badass spines and bony protrusions on the board itself. But it complements your army so well, and it just was clear to me from the onset that you had like this really powerful vision for it. And I think that's what attracted me to the army right off the bat. So I guess, you mentioned like reading the books and seeing the artwork and realizing that the models didn't exist. So was that kind of it? Was that where the genesis came from, is trying to fill in the blanks and, try to imagine what the rest of the units could look like? Because one thing I guess we haven't really said is every model on there on the board for the Armies on Parade board is basically a counts as version of something else in the Dark Elder Codex. So everything from, the Talos paint engine to, I don't know, the Reaver jet bikes, etc. It's all converted to be part of a really twisted homunculus coven. So maybe you could just talk about that a little bit and explain,
Sure.
Just some of the basics of how you came up with all this crazy stuff.
Absolutely. I'm trying to figure it out because I know that it started with, hey, I'm going to make a coven. And hey, I'm going to make some racks. I'm going to make some grotesques. And wouldn't it be cool if like these guys were riding around on a Raider that wasn't just a normal Raider, because this is a coven. So let's make the guy who's driving the Raider look kind of like a homunculus himself. And let's, instead of having the Raider powering itself, let's slap like kind of a Talos on the front of it. I think a lot of that came out of the concept that Games Workshop came up with, that the Talos pain engine. Even back in 3rd edition days, the model wasn't great, but they made this kind of flying scorpion looking thing that had a guy strapped into it.
Yeah, it's sort of crucified inside it.
Yeah, and I think the rules even for the old Talos were that the like death throes of this body strapped into it were propelling the machine forward. So I think I just kind of went off on the idea of a pain engine, and pain as like a possible generator for a vehicle. So it started with that. I think I have pictures of it on the site, even though I've never actually finished it. I need to finish it. It's a Raider that has a Talos pilot kind of at the front, and it looks like he's grown into the Raider. And then from there, I think I just started thinking, like, now that I've done a homunculus version of a Raider, like, what else could I do homunculus versions of? And yeah, I don't know where it came from, but at a point it just went crazy.
I think the model that really drew me into the project the most was the Chronos Parasite engine. It's really difficult to describe. You could probably do it better than I could, but basically it looks nothing like the official model per se. It's this nightmare creation that looks like something straight out of like a Guillermo del Toro movie or something. But he's got, these face full of blood with his spine that arches over it like a crane. I mean, it's just incredible. Like that, I think for me is like, okay, I'm not trying to replicate. I'm coming up with something totally different. You know, like what's the thought process? Again, it's really difficult to describe. You could probably do it better than I could, but basically, it looks nothing like the official model per se. It's this nightmare creation that looks like something straight out of like a Guillermo del Toro movie or something. But he's got these faces sort of popping out different parts of his body, and on his back there's sort of like a pool of blood with this spine that arches over it like a crane. I mean, it's just incredible. Like that, I think for me is like, okay, I'm not trying to replicate something. I'm coming up with something totally different. You know, like what's the thought process behind coming up with something like that, as opposed to like what you did with the Raider, which is let's see how we can convert a Raider to fit within the Coven. And the Chronos Parasite engine and his little buddies were like fundamentally different, but they still blend in.
That one I actually have a decent story for. I can remember exactly where that one came from. When Games Workshop released kind of the Coven wave, there were the racks and the grotesques. I will never love the grotesque model. I think that the grotesque model, the name for it is very fitting. I don't like shitting on Dark Eldar and Dark Eldar designs because I am a huge lover of Jess Goodwin.
Yeah.
Jess.
Yeah, Jess is. I mean,
I've seen Dark Eldar concepts before they were actually models, and he's a phenomenal artist, and I love everything he does. But when that rack, or when the Homunculus Coven wave came out, it was the Talos, the plastic Talos, which was amazing, and then the Finecast grotesques, which looked like breakdancing Bigfoot, and then the racks, which were okay models, but they were just so like they very much looked like Frankenstein creations. Like they looked like line after line of these guys walking with their arms at their sides.
well, actually, you mentioned Jess real quick. Let me just kind of have you watched any of the Warhammer Live stuff?
No, I need to get on that.
They interviewed him a couple weeks ago. You have to subscribe to watch the older videos, but it's really actually a great interview. And in it, he mentioned kind of as an aside that he really had intended to do many more of those models, but for some reason, like only a couple of the designs even made it out, and that's why they all look the same. He's like, I had plans to do a whole series of them. It just never happened. So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting because I read that on your blog too, that you were not impressed with the sameness of them, but that's why.
Yeah, no, I haven't. This is the Twitch stuff you're talking about?
Yeah, Warhammer Live on Twitch. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I haven't gotten into that, but I've been meaning to because I heard that they interviewed Jess. Yeah, when the Talos came out, like I was really impressed with the Talos, and I feel kind of like a bit of a shit because I love Jess, I love his models, but every time he makes something, I need to convert it. Like, I don't think I have ever built a plastic Carnifex straight out of the box.
Right.
I'm in love with the plastic Carnifex. I converted. My first big Carnifex conversion was an Exocrine.
Yeah, I saw that.
And it was, I don't know if we're supposed to talk about this, but whatever, it's been enough years. I did it as a team project with High Fleet Malak, and we entered it in the Golden Demon in Germany, and we actually won a bronze Golden Demon for it.
Oh, badass.
Like, you're not allowed to do that. You're not supposed to work on things together. Although, wait, I think Germany had a weird rule because I remember we said that we could work on together. Anyway, it was the only Golden Demon I've ever won, and I actually had the chance to meet Jess that time because back in the day, High Fleet Malak was really close with Jess and with the studio, and he actually got Tyranid bottles before the Tyranid bottles came out, and he converted a whole. I don't know if you ever remember seeing it, but it was like a Godzilla armor, a whole bunch of black and red Carnifexes and Hive Tyrants.
That sounds vaguely familiar, but I didn't follow a lot of the Tyranid stuff back then.
Yeah, so it was featured in White Dwarf, and he had a really good relationship. So when we were at Games Day this one time, we actually got to hang out with Phil and Jess. Like this was very recently after the Tyranid Codex had come out, and I got Jess to autograph the bottom of the demon.
That's so cool.
Why do you want me to autograph this? I'm like, dude, you made the model that I converted to win this. He's like, okay, crazy man, here you go. But sorry, that's a complete aside. I love everything Jess Goodwin has done, but I don't think I've ever made one of his models straight out of the box. I think I always convert them. and it makes me feel bad, but the Talos is one of my most converted models. I love the Talos. One day I'm going to build a Talos straight, just like out of dedication to Jess being a phenomenal artist.
Right.
But what I saw when the Talos came out, sorry, this is a very rounded out
It's a
answer.
very long story.
When the Talos came out, I was sold on the Talos design. Like, yes, this is what a Talos looks like. This is perfect. We got like the crazy arms, we got the crazy head. This is what a Talos is supposed to look like. But then they were like, oh, and there's this other thing called the Chronos Parasite Engine. It's this soul-sucking creature that devours your souls and uses them as energy and then uses them to power its weapons. And then it's like, okay, but what does it look like? It's like, oh, well, it's a Talos, but it's got some tentacles in it.
Right, and it's got this big disc thing. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and it's got a sucker. It's got a sucker that you'd see on a mosquito.
Right, that's right, yeah.
Okay. All right. So we got all of the basic dry brushing done. So that's cool. So now we're going to, I think it's just start the cloth, I suppose. That's what I did last time. I could lay another layer of flesh on these guys, but I don't think I'm going to right now. I think I'm just going to leave you. Yeah, I think just... I do not have a lot of this left. Let's see how much we got. Don't have a lot. Okay.
Yeah, it had like a proboscis, didn't it?
Yeah. So the way that my Chronos Parasite engine came about is that I looked at the Talos and I said, this is not a soul parasite. This is not terrifying. So I took the actual model. It's that model is about 70% or 60% Talos. It's just that I got a whole, like basically all the tentacles that you could possibly find in the kit that come for the Chronos, and I put them all as things kind of tail, so it looks kind of like an octopus.
Yeah.
And then I used like all the biological parts of the kit, but none of the mechanical parts. So I built these kind of like large grasping hands and I have this huge mouth that's kind of like sucking in souls. And the thing you're referring to on the back with all the faces in it, it has the kind of like crane-looking thing arching up over it. That one is officially referred to as the punch bowl of souls, because if you look at it from the back, it's got the pattern of the Kronos' like disc siphon,
it does.
siphon or whatever it's called, inlaid in it, and then all the souls that it's sucked in are these faces that are kind of like churning around that design. And it just came from this idea where I looked at the Talos and I was like, what would this look like if it was an actual spirit sucker? And I'm like, okay, well, it would have this huge hungry mouth that's like trying to suck souls. I'm like, well, what if it had like a mouth on its hand? And what if it had a mouth on its other hand? What if there was like all these mouths all over it that were just like hungrily trying to devour souls? And I even had this concept of doing a victim model on the base that's having his spirit sucked out. This would be too much to distract the model.
I think they were probably right, but I mean, you almost get that just from looking at the thing. Like all of that is communicated so well. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's that I think might have been the place where my obsession with converting all the models from the Codex came about, because when I started thinking about that, that was like a Kronos parasite, and it like kind of exists in our world and kind of does it, and it feeds on souls. And then I was looking at the other models in the Codex and thinking about how I could convert these to be represented with more homunculus style units. And one that jumped out at me was the mandrakes.
Yes.
And that was another. Sorry?
Oh no, I was just agreeing because they obviously tie into the parasite engine.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't if you just go and look at the fluff, but I found a way to tie them in, because the mandrake models are pretty cool, but in the fluff it talks about these things emerging from people's shadows and creeping up on you. And I was like, okay, and I actually spoken to Jess about the concepts for the mandrakes, because I spoke to him kind of like after he'd released some of the new the Dark Eldar models, but not all of them. And he was telling me about how his concept for the mandrakes was informed heavily by Japanese myth and Japanese demons.
Well, yeah, they're wearing hakama, like they're out of flayed skin, but yeah.
Yeah, and like the kind of idea, I can't remember, is it just the ring, the one with the girl with the crazy hair in her face, and it's really scary.
Oh yeah, the ring. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he said he was like very much influenced by that kind of like Japanese demon myths. So they came out that perfectly. But for me, when I looked at the fluff and they talked about these things emerging from your shadows, I'm like, no, these need to be like nightmares. These need to be like walking, talking nightmares. So I kind of took the design I had for the Kronos Parasite engine, which is this tentacled thing with arms and this giant gaping mouth, and I kind of shrunk that down to sort of a mandrake-sized model. And same thing with like kind of like all these tentacles coming off them and these like long grasping hands and these giant gaping mouths that were looking to suck your soul. And like in all of them, I kind of carried over when I was doing the Kronos, and I took that part on the back that is the spirit siphon, that kind of pattern, looks like runes or something. I carried that over to other parts of the model so that it looked like it was kind of animated by these runes, and then I sculpted those onto the like smaller Kronos parasites as well that were going to stand in for mandrakes.
Which is an awesome visual tie-in. Yeah, it really does. It brings them together so well.
And like it's like when I have an idea and I have a concept for an army, it kind of goes crazy. So there's a whole extension of that line, that a whole side of my homunculus coven is based on kind of a kind of fleshcraft or homunculus craft that is based on the kind of stuff around the Kronos Parasite engine. So the whole like weird kind of demon things, they feed off souls. I've extended that into, so we've got the Kronos Parasite engine, we've got the mandrakes. I have a concept for scourges that instead of flying around on wings, they're like Dark Eldar warriors that are basically this mandrake Kronos Parasite thing that lets them phase in and out of reality. So think of them as kind of Dark Eldar wolf spiders.
Yeah.
And they're just scourge models, but they have like mini maws with like tentacles coming off them, like trapped in these fields on their back. And just like I did with one of my mandrake models, where I have it kind of like phasing out of the ground, I want to have my scourge models like phasing in and out of terrain.
That's such a cool idea.
And then from that, I want to transfer it even down to the Beastmaster, where there's like the razorwing flocks, the weird birds that fly around with them for some reason.
Yep.
I want to, instead of having birds, I want to have these juvenile Kronos parasites, where it'll be like a base of these tentacled moths that are just kind of flying around and trying to eat people.
Okay.
It is cool.
Unfortunately, I need to stop the interview somewhere so we can keep these episodes around a half hour. So this seems like as good a spot as any. We will continue right from where this one leaves off. So if you're listening to this after all.
Hello, everybody.
Fuck. Dude.
You're listening to Chapter Approved with your loyal host, Tibbs. And today I'm extremely excited to bring you the first part of my interview with Mr. Pink from Modern Synthesis fame. Now, before I get into the interview, I do want to mention briefly that you're listening to Chapter Approved with your loyal host, Tibbs. And today I'm extremely excited to bring you the first part of my interview with Mr. Pink from Modern Synthesis fame.
Dude, I think something creepy and nightmarish. I really like the Nighthorn models. I think these are Bladegeist Revenants. I could be wrong. All the names sound the same. But these ghosties, something like that, but with creepy masks or some Beastmen stuff, or maybe some of the warbands from Warcry. I think they've got a lot of character to them. Last basing question. I've done half an army with sand bases and hate the amount of steps. Would you recommend sticking to it for consistency, or is there a quick alternative? For kind of dry sand, you're probably going to have to stick with it, dude. You could mix paint with sand, or something you could do if I don't know if you've built or painted the stuff that you do have. You could wash them with texture paint and then paint them, and then you could use something like conveniently, they're literally on camera. Agrellan Badland, which has sand contained within it and is a really, really nice paint to use. And you'll get an effect like, again, very conveniently, literally here ready to be on camera. Okay, so it's quite hard to see, but in here, you can see the crackles where I've put this, because this is sand, and then I've put the texture paint over it. So the texture paint starts dominating it the thicker it is. So you can kind of glaze over it with texture paint, even if it's been painted, and then repaint that and then go in that direction with your army. But you might just have to stick the course of that army and then not do sand for your next one. Yeah, you too, mate. Thank you very much for tuning in, CT. About how much time do I spend cutting sprues? For what? For when I'm building models, or you mean preparing the sprues? I don't quite understand the question. I've been using synthetics for just metallics and sable hair for everything else. Are there any caveats to avoid with sable? I mean, I use some of our brushes with oils. I've got a couple on the table here that have been used with oils and washes, and on my abused brushes, and they're still in a pretty good state considering the level of abuse. But the major thing with natural hair is to look after it once you've abused it. That's the really kind of important thing. So if you are doing anything heavy with them,
Metallics would be that, or foundation paints, base paints. You know, they've got really claggy texture to them. So just give them a good wash afterwards. And then the other one is, and I don't manage to do this myself always, but if you store stuff like this, moisture will run into the ferrule, which is bad for them. Ideally, store your brushes like this or store your brushes like that, and then at least it's not you're not encouraging stuff to collect in the ferrule, which is where bad stuff happens with the brush. Ideally, all brushes would be stored point down like that, because then you're running the pigments away from the delicate part of the process. You're most welcome, dude. Taking screws off models. Oh man, I take far too long doing it because I hate the bits that are left, and then I sand it. I've got like, if you around my desk, like this is how much I hate stuff being left on models. So I've got like 3 different types of sandpaper, so I can go from one to the other, because I like my stuff to have a smooth finish. I spend longer assembling models than I do painting them very often, like very, very often, even for my own armies. Building the base and building the model and making it perfect, I'll often spend twice as long doing that as I will getting it kind of to a tabletop standard on the table, which is probably a bit stupid on my part. It's kind of a hang up I've got. All right, guys, I am going to call it there, which means that I have to work out how to end the video. I'm not sure how to do this. There's an X in the corner, so I presume it's that. Thank you very much for tuning in. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for your questions and your engagement. And any of you that have bought our brushes really does help support the channel. So thank you so much for your support. The suggestions also support us. They give us brilliant ideas for future content. So thank you very, very much for tuning in. Have a lovely evening. Stay safe out there. And I will catch you at some point soon.
Weird.
Joining of these, so I can hold them both in place. You'll get the proper idea of how this would look, because I think it could look absolutely phenomenal. There, check that out. Like, have you ever seen something that is asking to be done more than that in the world of Warhammer? I think that could look the bomb. Really, really, really excited for how this is going to look visually. And then really importantly, it's hard to show on camera because I need about as many hands as this model's got currently, but I'm going to need to do some stuff with these little bits of wing membrane and stuff like that and hack off these bits here, but the potential joins are actually really, really good, especially this one. Yeah, it's a kit bash that absolutely needs to happen, dude. So what I'm going to be doing is kind of, once I've worked out where they're intersecting, how they're intersecting, so I've got this claw that's going to be hidden. Painting's going to be a nightmare. I'm definitely 100% not prepared for how difficult it's going to be to. Welcome to Lockdown Army episode 3. We started off pretty powerfully. We've got some very cool converted models. This guy turned out particularly well. He's looking pretty good. All the tattoos have been smoothed out and stuff like that. I will be deciding what we do with exactly goes in his hand. Got some amazing suggestions. What we're going to be concentrating on in this episode is taking those conversions that we made rough and just smoothing them out a little bit of green stuff, making things physically secure. I really want this army to be something that I don't need to be super delicate with when I'm holding. When I'm painting, never mind if I ever play with it. What else we're going to be deciding is basing. Now, I've got a load of different noisy sources of inspiration for this. I've got some old kits that I've had, and then I've got some newer ones as well. So this one's got, look at that. It's got a big chapel tower with a bell in it. I love the idea of that. This one is kind of, if you are looking to find light sources, you need this. So it might not look it kind of at first glance, it's just ruined scenery, but it's absolutely packed with these, which you can stick on anything. Just so unbelievably useful. You could also chop them off and have them in a hand or stick them on top of other weapons or on top of a banner or something crazy like that. It's got these far more substantial, larger ones. One thing that I'm really keen on is sticking with, I know it's all made up, but sticking with a theme. So I don't like the idea of my light sources coming from like glowing weapons, or I don't want something to look like a bright blue power sword, blade, or whatever. This is going to be hopefully old, scary, rusty, bloody, maybe covered in wear and tear, but the special effects hopefully aren't going to be coming from the weapons, maybe unless it was something a bit more warp stony or evil. So that means they're going to need to come from magical sources. So flames, be they magical, coloured or otherwise, pendants, amulets, if you do it a bit extra, in the orientation that I'm after. The ends are going to be the bits that are the worst. The middle will probably be absolutely perfect. So today we're going to be, no, we're not cooking, actually. We are, however, going to be cooking this. So if we take a little look in the pan, I've got some boiling water, and I've got this on a low heat. I'm not going to give you a gas mark or anything. You just want it just about boiling or just about not boiling. Use tools. I've got indestructible fingers, so I probably won't use them, but use tools. That's what I recommend. Pick a pan which has the smallest possible circumference, and then we're going to try and lower everything in at the same time. So starting with the middle to help it bend. We're going to get that in. Just treat it like it's spaghetti, if in doubt, and then we're going to pop the rest of it in there. Now, we might have to do a little bit of fiddling with this in terms of getting the bends in all the sections we need, but simply push it towards the edges, and that should coax it to pretty much what you need. What I'm going to do now is dip different bits in, take them out, curl them round, and once you've curled something, don't put it back in because it will go back to its natural shape quite easily. So after heating, curl it, and then hopefully we'll end up with something like that. Perfect. You can run this under cold water if you need to at the end, just to kind of set it. It sets pretty fast though. To fix the straight ends, which are going to be the single, probably most problematic point, what I'm going to do is very selectively turn the temperature up, bring the water to the boil. Weird. Dip the very ends in, and then really quick, take them out, shake off the excess, and stress them in the orientation that I'm after. The ends are going to be the bits that are the worst. The middle will probably be absolutely perfect. So I'm just going to do that with the ends, and hopefully that one's worked a little bit better. Actually, that's quite a natural circle on this part. You're never going to get it perfect, but it's flexible, so we can fix that. Okay, so on to the basic now. One thing I want you to bear in mind is this is a particular method that is not the most efficient. I would love your suggestions as to how you do things fast whilst keeping it organic and working with nice materials. I've just used the same piece of plastic card that I started with, so pretty much all of this base until we hit the green stuff has been made with one single, like £1.20 sheet of plastic card, which is a pretty useful thing to be able to do. This is one of my preferred ways to work, and basically the entire process is very organic. So any mistakes I make, I follow them up with just hiding them with the next stage, or I will realize halfway through that actually I do like the idea of mushrooms coming out from under that, or I'm going to use a really big bit of slate, therefore this has to move here and this has to move here, and I'm quite happy to go back in and hack it kind of. It's not a neat process until the very final steps, and the sand which finishes it off, that's a really important part of it. So you'll see me spend a lot of time working on making sure that the base ends here and the sand ends here, and there is no like wobbly weird middle bit between the two of them. It's one just cuts cleanly into the other. One little tip is that I like to mix in a bit of black paint or dark paint, whatever color you like, with my PVA for basing. And what that allows is anywhere where you're in a nook or a cranny and the sand's gone in there. A lot of the time when you prime your miniature, the sand really stands out in the recesses. It'll still be pale white, kind of beigey ivory colored, and that doesn't make any sense in the shadows. So that is where we've ended up basing wise. It's all turned out super nicely. Really pleased with that. The finishing touches make it, it's always the case, isn't it? You can put however much time you want to into the beginning, and then what actually matters is that I put 7 mushrooms on there and 5 skulls and a twig. It's kind of depressing when you think about it, isn't it? Really pleased with that. Super solid end result, and that is asking for painting. It's going to be quite difficult to paint. I've not glued on the tail yet. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the tail because it really is in the way, and stuff like that drives me crazy. Without the tail on, it's actually not too bad for access to any point in the base, so I'm slightly tempted to glue the tail on afterwards, which is going to be really difficult to get a good bond on, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, I think. It has dried overnight, and I'm going to quickly go over with a dry brush and then a stiffer brush, just to remove any excess sand that we've got that hasn't dried to it. I'm just going to sneak a little bit of texture paint in the deepest recesses of this base, and the reason for that is I want certain parts of it to look a little bit more wet. So with this stuff, I'm just popping it down fairly thick, and then I'm using water to phase it out. And hopefully that should lead to a kind of nice natural looking blend. It's also going to allow me to sneak it into some areas where I've only got green stuff there currently. But having a couple of textures in here, I'm sure will be a benefit to the kind of final overall look. Okay, so you don't know until you try. I want to see, following on from a load of amazing suggestions, someone said about literally having a bird hatching out of an egg or something like that, the kind of avian weird theme that we could have here. I want to see if it works. So I'm going to build this endless spell, which is from the endless spells box, the birdies, and I'm going to see how that looks in the hand. It might not work, but you know, it really helps to try this stuff out, and I should probably build this model at some point anyway. So with his tail blue tacked on and those birds blue tacked on, that is a really funky looking model. That is legit probably one of the kit bashes or conversions I've done that I've been the most proud of ever. I think it turned out really, really nicely. And his base, which obviously we've spent a lot of time on today, is doing a real good job of showcasing and just planting him solidly in an environment. I think that is a display-ish base, and it gives you, in no uncertain terms, the idea that he is coming from a natural environment that is slightly fungal, slightly rotting. What colour do we paint him? Please let me know below. Let me know what you think of the birds as well. I think they work really quite nicely. It might be that they're too over the top and it could be a little bit more subtle and less dramatic, but overall better if you just had one bird or two or something like that. I quite like the idea that there could be a cracked egg with the birds coming from them and then something dripping down from it. You know, he's just cast a spell, something to do. Wizard's magic, you know, Wizard did it, something like that. It's worth taking the time on these things to get to a result that you are happy with. And often, I think a little bit of time between sessions gives you loads of opportunities to think, actually, I could try this out, I could try that out.
Yes.
And then once your ideas have kind of percolated and distilled,
Amy, it says you are trained in technology. That's very good. Are you adept at Excel?
No,
PowerPoint?
no,
Publisher?
not really.
Exactly in what area of technology are you proficient?
Snapchat, Pinterest, Instagram, Vine, Twitter, you know, the big ones.
I'm surprised you didn't say Facebook.
That's for old people, like my parents. That's funny.
Well, Amy, when you're working for me, you have to have those kind of research skills because I'll send you things for you to comb through and get the answers and send them to me. So for that, you've got to be really good at technology.
For stuff like that, no problem. I'll just ask Siri.
You'll just ask Siri?
You know, Siri, tell me this, Siri, find me that. We're all good at getting you the answers.
Tell Siri, I want you ready to go at 8 sharp each and every morning.
I don't understand
What don't you understand?
what you just said.
You don't understand be ready to go?
No. You said 8, right?
Yes.
8, like in the morning, 8?
Yes, in the morning.
Yeah. That kind of doesn't work for me. Who gets up at 8?
I do.
I Skype with my French boyfriend in pairs until like 3 in the morning. I don't even get to Starbucks until like 10, where I order my grande chai tea latte, 3 pumpkin milk, light water, 2% foam, extra hot, but not too hot. So if it's okay, I work best in the morning at 10:45.
Wow. Amy, I don't think we're going to be a good fit.
Why are you so negative? I can sense your hostilities, and right now I am not feeling very safe. I've been here for over 5 minutes, and the only nice thing you have said to me was nice resume, which I typed all night for this meeting with you. You've given me no guidance, no validation, no encouragement, no supervision. Is there an HR director somewhere?
HR director?
Yes, I need to speak to someone. I may have to take off today as a mental health day.
Take the day off. Amy, look at me. You don't work here.
Are you firing me?
Okay, yes.
That was pretty good. Good job. Shit. What? I don't understand what that was.
A furtive great one on a lake of mud. A tall beast with invisible projectiles.
I've seen this.
Tens of never-before-seen enemies and pages of untold lore. The cut content of Bloodborne has finally been laid bare for us. And so, to quote Mikolash,
Let us sit about and speak feverishly, chatting till the wee hours of my wonderful nightmare!
Okay, Mikolash, calm down. First, the cut bosses, revealed by Zully the Witch. So, those tentacles clawing at you through the fog, that's the first sign that you're not supposed to be here. Well, that and the doorway to nothingness behind you. Upon entering, you'll emerge onto this muddy coastline, which is very reminiscent of the Orphans Arena, except this place also has the sinking architecture of the Chalice Dungeon, which is really Lovecraftian, if you've read his work. And a few of you may have realized already what this thing is. Take a look at its face. It's the moon presence, though not as we know it. This form it's in is this flailing mess of a creature that's barely capable of standing upright. I think you can even see its heart sort of hanging loosely below it in this exposed ribcage. It's really weak, though you can see echoes of its former glory when it lifts itself up off the ground like this. And do you know what I think this thing is? I think it might be the physical form of the moon presence, preserved in the Chalice Dungeons, as opposed to the consciousness of the moon presence that we fight in the Hunter's Dream. The Chalice Dungeons, after all, are home to the slumbering Great Ones, and some of these labyrinths are in contact with the cosmos, which allows the Great Ones to function, and I quote, on transcendental planes of thought. Many Great Ones ascended long ago, and as we know, these beings up above in the nightmares, they no longer have a need for their body in the physical plane, and it would make some sense for the moon presence's physical body to still be down here. But regardless, it's clearly a very undeveloped boss fight, and it's quite easy as a result, which kind of suits its appearance, really. Kind of like King Alant's true form in Demon Souls. But anyway, speaking of incomplete bosses, this creature, currently going by the name Great One Beast, is this far more agile monster than many of the other large bosses you would have fought in Bloodborne, and I think would have made for a great fight as a result. It has similar moves to Sif and many other wolf-like enemies in Souls, and just look at that face, it really reminds me of the dragon god from Demon Souls. The Great One Beast. Would this have been a Great One that contracted the Plague of Beasts, or would it be a Great One that started the plague, perhaps? There's not much else to say here. And lastly, a fight with not one wet nurse,
nor 2, but 3 wet nurses. Zully, who is the Chalice Dungeon's host, they muse on whether this is an issue with their illusions spawning but not going away, or whether this was just meant to be a multi-enemy boss fight. It's a bit of a mess, either way. And speaking of Murgo's wet nurse, after you defeated her in the main game, the Hunter's Workshop is set ablaze, you recall. Well, in Gurman's cut content, he has a very interesting response to this turn of events.
We've no need for this accursed abode. Let flame cleanse this house of horrors. These frightful things, look at them burn. All ye hunters, let it be known, we are free, free as the wind. Lawrence, the end is not far away now. Every last dream will burn out, and Flora will return from the moon. As for us, the time has come to honor our vows. Hunters are needed no longer. You and I shall fight to the death, and she will consume the victor. The way we've always said we'd end it, you recall. Oh, Lawrence, of course you remember.
There's so much information here, though there is only really one solid piece of information we can take from this cut.
When it comes to making a big budget film, there are plenty of things that are likely to get left on the cutting room floor. Usually such editorial decisions are made to keep the pace of the movie afloat, to remove redundant character interactions, and keep the film to a watchable length. However, every now and again the ball is dropped, and as successful, beloved, and masterful as it is, the Star Wars franchise is no exception to this rule. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 deleted scenes from the Star Wars films that should have really been left in. Number 10, Anakin vs. Greedo, the Phantom Menace. Greedo may not have been around for long in A New Hope, but he made a striking impact on pop culture thanks to his death at the hands of Han Solo. In The Phantom Menace, the first of the divisive prequel trilogy, Greedo made a brief and eventually cut appearance on Tatooine, where the future bounty hunter gets himself in a tussle with a young Anakin Skywalker. In the scene, Greedo and Anakin can be seen fighting following Anakin's major win at the pod race. Not only would this scene have shown that Anakin had a violent streak pretty early on, but it also gives a brief bit of backstory to a pop culture icon, whilst also throwing up some foreshadowing of his eventual demise. Number 9. The Jedi in Action, Attack of the Clones. With Attack of the Clones, the Battle of Geonosis served as a spectacular finale to an otherwise lackluster film, starting off with all the Jedi igniting their lightsabers around the stadium. It not only signals the beginning of the Clone Wars, but also allows fans to see the Jedi at full force. It's great, but the problem is, there's just not enough of it. Fortunately, in one of Attack's deleted scenes, Jedi Masters Plo Koon and Ki-Adi-Mundi can be seen leading a charge against a droid battalion, showing off their skill and allowing audiences to focus on some Force users outside of the usual suspects. The true tragedy of the scene is that it was never actually finished, abandoned in order to cut the film down to a more manageable length. Number 8. The Foundations of the Rebellion, Revenge of the Sith. During Revenge of the Sith, it was starting to become a bit clear just how much of a corrupt and sketchy lad that Chancellor Palpatine was. With the Jedi coming to sense that the dark side had surrounded him, even the mostly peaceful Senate were considering taking unprecedented action to save democracy. In one of the film's many deleted scenes, Padme Amidala, Bail Organa, and Mon Mothma meet with some close allies to discuss what needs to be done to preserve their democracy. Both Mon Mothma and Bail Organa would go on to become leaders of the rebellion, with Organa even raising Leia after the death of her mother. It would have made for a cool nod to the future films, and would have given fans more time with some criminally underused characters. Number 7. The Death of Shark T, Revenge of the Sith. Who was Shark T? An accomplished and well-respected Jedi Master, she served on the camp, with Organa even raising Leia after the death of her mother. It would have made for a cool nod to the future films, and would have given fans more time with some criminally
It's kind of neat. Fuck.
used characters. Number 7. The Death of Shaak Ti, Revenge of the Sith. Poor Shaak Ti, an accomplished and well-respected Jedi Master, she served on the Council during the Clone Wars and was often stationed on Kamino, training the new clone recruits. One deleted scene sees her killed by General Grievous aboard his ship, but this is now no longer regarded as canon. Her canon death comes in a deleted scene later during Darth Vader's siege of the Jedi Temple. She is seen here meditating and senses Vader enter without noticing that her former friend has turned to the dark side. Consequently, he stabs her through the chest without a word. Her canon death was most recently confirmed in the Clone Wars TV series, where both Anakin and Yoda are shown visions of her demise. Number 6. Yoda arrives on Dagobah, Revenge of the Sith. The final in Revenge of the Sith's unfairly cut deleted scenes comes courtesy of Grand Master Yoda. After his fight with Palpatine and the successful execution of Order 66, Yoda laments to Bail Organa that he must go into hiding, having failed to stop the rise of the Empire. The end of the film focuses on Obi-Wan Kenobi traveling to Tatooine and giving baby Luke to his aunt and uncle. But there was another scene showing a broken and noticeably dejected Yoda arriving on Dagobah. Not only would this have explained when the old Jedi arrived on the swamp planet famously featured in Empire Strikes Back, but it would also have offered up a final reminder that the old way of things is dead. Number 5. Luke and Biggs, A New Hope. Biggs Darklighter, holder of the world's coolest ever name and a close friend of Luke Skywalker, is seen only briefly in A New Hope. Luke bumps into him at the rebel base on Yavin 4, and they briefly talk about old times and find they're going to take on the Death Star together. The scene was quite effective as it was, giving insight into how good a pilot Luke is, and later killing Biggs off in an emotional blow to the young Jedi. But it could have been even more effective. In an extended deleted scene, Luke and Biggs talk about the war on Tatooine, and it is here that Biggs reveals that he's going to join the rebellion. Luke and Biggs' relationship is well explored in this scene, and if it had been left in, would...
It's been a long time coming. I've dropped hints for years about how much I love Bloodborne, how I think it's one of the best games ever made, how it resonates with me on a greater level than the rest of the Souls series, and how I believe it's an absolute must-play game for anyone with the means to do so. Today, it's finally time to break down exactly what I love and don't love about Miyazaki's Gothic masterpiece. I've got 20 talking points prepared, and I think it'll provide you all with the insight you need to see things from my own perspective. Let's kick things off with the sounds of Yharnam. It's not to say the entire series isn't well known for its fantastic score, but Bloodborne to me is regarded more highly because while its music reaches the peaks of the series, it rarely deviates from. Every single boss track, from the swelling orchestra of Father Gascoigne's theme to the haunting vocals of the Witches of Hemwick to the melancholy theme accompanying your final duel with Gehrman, every single track in this game is crafted masterfully, and it makes even the most mundane interactions brim with eerie and engrossing emotion. What I mean to say is that even when you're duking it out with a celestial emissary, the sound design behind it isn't an afterthought, and that's something that adds a lot to the experience even when it does hit its less vibrant notes in terms of challenge. And when those tracks aren't the centerpiece, you're treated to ambient sounds throughout the game's world to make it feel like a true night of terror. When I play this game, I feel fear, I feel dread, I feel exhilaration, adrenaline, heartbreak, purpose, and ultimately satisfaction. Every bit of that starts with the superb music and sound design. We're only through a single level and I already feel like I'm drooling with praise. Well, it's going to keep coming in droves when it comes to the level design. The first level in the game, Central Yharnam, is in my mind one of the best introductory levels ever designed in a video game. It has enemies of varying difficulty to introduce the player to different enemy fighting styles and offers growing levels of challenge. It has many items that are useful for first-time players, such as upgrade materials, blood echo drops, healing and bullet stores, and even stands as one of the best places in the game to farm for healing items. It boasts a winding jungle of different paths that are interconnected in a brilliant way, with multiple shortcuts connecting the beginning lamp to both of the area bosses. These two bosses included are first a large beast to prepare you for the monstrous behemoths ready to come that is on the easier end of the spectrum, and it includes a challenging boss that in many ways attempts to force you to adapt to the game's aggressive playstyle. It even includes colorful NPCs, one of which can make the aforementioned boss easier by way of using a special item. The incline in difficulty after the area isn't too large either, so if you spend your time fully exploring and conquering the challenges within, it should help you feel well prepared for what lies ahead. And this is only the first of many well-designed levels. I've said many times that I played this series primarily for its combat and bosses. When I did the area rankings, I got bored because I don't enjoy talking about them as much. Most of them are one and done. Once I've beaten them, their thrill is gone. But while Bloodborne certainly does hold a few that can be tedious to experience, I can't argue that even those aren't designed with immense attention to detail. Whenever I remake my way through the game, I rarely feel inconvenienced by having to redo the levels, but rather enjoy the expert craftsmanship all over again. Seriously, I'm making myself want to play Bloodborne right now just by talking about it. Instead, let's talk lore. Yeah, that's a big thing in this series, right? Lore speculation is a massive part of the community, and it's one that I primarily shied away from. Why? Well,
frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
That's not a shot at Vati. He is a beautiful man that makes beautiful content. But when it comes to me, I'm standing there like, I'm just here to fist pigs for their blood echoes. Then I beat Bloodborne for the first time and was sat there like, I don't understand what the fuck I just played. Enter our Lord and Savior Vati dropping a 31-minute truth bomb on our asses, making me understand how every bit of this world and the characters within have a purpose that isn't spoken through forced cutscenes, but gameplay, interactive dialogue, and the items within the universe itself. I'm not saying cinematic games don't have their place. That happens to be my favorite form of storytelling in the medium. So you should understand that it carries some gravity when I say this is some of the finest indirect storytelling I've ever seen. I'm not going to try to break it down for you. I'm sure many of you already seen Vati's video anyway, and if you haven't, we both know what you're going to be watching after this. All of the three previous loves combined to form a world that exudes so much soul it makes...
Where are we at? Okay, we're going to take a brief break and be right back.